Drum roll, please. Welcome into the space, Dr. Rainwaters, Rainwaters. So I met her a couple years ago, I think
hmm
now,
Yeah.
through a mentor of mine actually at the time. And I just loved what she was bringing forward into the world and immediately messaged her and I was like, we need to be best friends.
Yeah.
And so
Thank you,
and
Instagram.
so I invited her here today, part of our monthly magic, just for funsies, and a little bit of her background. And you can absolutely introduce yourself better than I can.
Yeah.
You do soul channeled sessions
Yeah.
that are incredibly amplified.
Yeah.
Definitely amplified versions of animal communication, intuitive readings for humans, cosmic origin intuitive readings. I'm in,
Yeah.
like, I
Yeah.
want one of those.
Yeah, totally. We can
We
make
can
that
do that
happen.
today.
Yeah.
And you're also a shamanic healer. So we have a lot of overlap with what we do and bring into the world. And I would
Mhm.
love for you to take it away and introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you, everybody. Like Kara said, thank you so much for welcoming me into this space. Thank you guys for taking time out of your day. Um, but yeah, I'm Dr. Tracy Rainwaters. I have been a human and an animal chiropractor for almost 20 years with a specialty practice in equine chiropractic. And I really, whenever people ask me, like, how did you get into animal communication, shamanic healing? Like, how did this happen? Aside from feeling like I always grew up a highly empathic, very sensitive child, I really always point to, the horses sort of, I'm going to say drug me into this, perhaps not kicking and screaming, but they definitely pulled me into this pathway in that very early into my career. When I would work on a horse, I started to put my hands on their bodies and they would actually show me images of what was going on inside of their body. Or they would show me, it was almost like watching a movie in my mind of traumatic events or things that happened to them. And then to add a layer to that, they started showing me what was going on with their humans that was causing whatever dysfunction was in their body. So if you guys can imagine me, like a super shy, I was like painfully shy growing up, just starting out in the world, starting a business, doing chiropractic work on horses, which almost 20 years ago was pretty niche. I would say it's way more accepted now. And feeling like the horses were pushing me to tell their humans that whatever emotional traumatic event happened in their life was the reason why their horse was consistently lame, on their right hind leg. I didn't really know what to do with this. And a series of events happened in my very early 30s. Basically, it culminated with my mom getting a very severe cancer diagnosis. And a really good friend of mine told me, like, hey, I just went and saw the shaman. I think you would be really into it, and I think you should just go see what that experience is like. And so I booked it. I'll never forget. It was on my 30th birthday. And in this process of receiving a shamanic healing, so much of what came forward helped me really understand who I was as an intuitive being. And it really like brought all of how I experience nature and the animals in my outer reality into really clear focus, where I had always felt like there was something innately wrong with me, which I think for intuitives, I think a lot of us growing up, there can be this sense of like feeling like being in the world is a very hypersensitive experience. And I never understood why people behaved the way that they did because I was framing everything from how I felt and saw the world. So that really pushed me into doing a 2 year shamanic training program, which kind of brought on the curious question of, well, if this works for people, could it work for an animal? And kind of went into my own like private research around that and found that by doing a shamanic healing process on an animal, the humans would be standing there thinking they were very neutral in the process and would start having like profound, like usually they would start crying and would have these big like revelatory experiences in that. And and again, it was through the shamanic training of learning how to understand my energy, how to work with energy. It was like the animal communication aspect just came online. And having this built-in practice where I was, seeing 150 horses a month, like it gave me like a tremendous training ground to begin to like really hone my communication with animals. So fast forward about 6 years ago, my husband and I bought a farm. We moved from California to Western Washington. I'm now traveling and I'm in my chiropractic practice in a very part-time role. And it really felt like this beautiful time in my life where I really wanted to open the more intuitive aspect of my work to really make it a prominent part of what I do instead of like this quiet, soft part, kind of behind the scenes of what I do. So that's really, I would say, in the last handful of years where I've had the profound privilege of really stepping into doing more animal communication work, which very much turned into channeling very quickly. Being an intuitive channel is, I mean, I would say even 7 years ago, if someone would have told me like this would be a massive part of the work that I did in the world, I would have just, I think, probably blatantly laughed in your face and just told you, like, there's just absolutely no way. But I think one of the greatest gifts, and what I really want to share with you guys today is, when we can open our hearts and our minds, and when we can see animal communication beyond what I call just like the personality self of the animal, but really open our hearts and our minds to the soul aspect of an animal, their place in the universe, and what they're here offering not only their human counterparts, but all life here on planet Earth. To me, it's like it opens a portal into the cosmos, and it really has profoundly amplified how I view our existence and what nature is offering all of humanity. And what these animals, to me, like primarily the horses keep pointing to, is animals have profound soul contracts when they come into this life. They have deep reasons for being here, and they are really here. There's a very high desire, in all of the animal kingdom and in all of nature, to really be partnered with humanity to help evolve our consciousness. We could say in so many ways, I feel like animals in nature want humanity to catch up with how they experience reality and what they see in the world. So that has really been the heart and soul of the work that I do. And um, it has really, I feel like it's been one of the greatest challenges is to really like, how do you bring this work out into the world? Because I feel like, sorry, my Zoom is doing some interesting stuff. When we really, I think for people to think of like, what does it mean to be an animal communicator? Often, what I found first and foremost is people would walk in my door, coming into a session wanting to know very much simple things like, how does my animal feel about their food? Do they have a favorite color? Do they love me? Which all of this is important and it's very valid. But there would be a little bit of a disconnect because the animals would want to talk about, well, here are these other lifetimes that we've had together. Here's what our souls are here to really manifest and co-create in this life. And it made it really feel like, to talk about like these very simplistic things, albeit it's valid and important, like that is like not where my primary skill set lies. And, Kara has done such a beautiful job, with her work really introducing to people, like, how do we speak to all of nature? How do we bring all of this forward? And, like, again, this work has also evolved to really looking at, like, how do we look at all life here on planet Earth and not just look at it as a mirror, like what is being mirrored back to me, but where do we see ourselves as a center point in the universe? And how do we really begin to shift and alter like our relationship with our animals so that, it's not only about creating harmony, but how do we really bring in and honor, what is existing between the two of us and allowing the love of the universe to be reflected through our animals and to profoundly shift what we hold within us to allow our emotional states to shift so that we can receive more divine love, but also really expand like our experience of our life and our place in the universe. So, kind of a big introduction, but kind of the essence of who I am and what I do. So,
I wrote down a whole page of notes.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we could go down so many rabbit holes today. I actually have some overlap with you that I'm curious to ask you more
Yeah.
about. So, did the animals lead you into shamanic concepts, or were you just naturally drawn to those? that modality
Yeah.
or those teachings. I'd be curious because for me, the animals were like, so we're going to talk about soul loss right now. I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like, you don't learn
Um,
that kind of stuff in animal
no.
communication. And so they kind of gave me the crumbs to look at
Yeah.
different types of modalities versus just talking to animals.
Yeah, and I think it's such an interesting thing that to me, I have never felt a separation. Like if I get really honest with how I have experienced my life and animals, like I've never doubted that animals were sentient, that they had consciousness, that they had purpose and feeling and all of these things, which is a very shamanic way of being in the world. So I would say prior to my shamanic training, did I have any concept of what a soul contract is? Like, not really. So I wasn't prior to that, like looking at these animals going like, hey, I think there's a belief system or a soul contract here that is at play. What I think really happened is going through that shamanic training is it kind of pulled in these things that felt very innate and natural to me and like gave it like a framework that made sense that I'm like, I could then kind of make sense of my reality. And then, yeah, but then it's like the horses came in and they were like, well, if humans have soul contracts, like we have them. And the way that happened for me, I will never forget. I was working on a horse that she was a 3-day event horse and had competed like at the Olympic level. So she was not actively in the peak of her career, but had done the upper echelon of the sport, was then living with an adult amateur, but still competing at a high level. And she was doing cross country. And for those of you guys who aren't familiar, it's like where you jump kind of natural obstacles in nature. And she had cantered down a hill and had to jump like down into a pond of water. And as she went down, like she jumped, and it was like her landing gear just didn't fully extend. So she landed on her knees and had a really severe injury to one of her, it was her right front limb, like from the knee down. And I was working on her probably 3 weeks after that happened. And she showed me, like, again, she showed me this image in her mind of the whole thing happening. And she was saying, like, what she showed me, it was like a soul contract from a past life popped in. And like, that was like the catalyzing event, like, for that injury. Um, which thankfully her human was a friend and was super open to this work. So we were able to go in and do a soul retrieval to help repair and heal out like what that lifetime was bringing forward. And she ended up making a full recovery, which for a horse her age, like given the severity of the injury, was not something that most of the vets thought would happen. So I feel like the animals, what they really did was pull in and help me reframe like the potential that can exist when we look at healing from a multidimensional aspect. So like we're not just healing the physical body, but really looking at like when we have chronic injury and illness, not just in a human, but in an animal, but really looking on a soul level, like, is there something here that is an echo from other lifetimes that needs to be healed out? Which often, like, that's the case. Or sometimes the disease process is exactly the soul contract and the lesson. So I feel like the animals, again, help me make sense of these different shamanic concepts. And I feel like certainly gave me a master class in what is possible within these different healing techniques and how they kind of exist in that web of possibility. But had I not had that shamanic training, would I have thought like, oh, soul contract? Like, absolutely not. Like, I definitely needed someone to come in and like kind of lay the land for me.
Yeah, I did too. For those in the group that might not be familiar with soul retrieval, would you like to offer a definition of what that is and why it
Yeah.
happens?
Yeah. So the way shamans view healing is they look at it from a slightly, it's like looking through the opposite end of the telescope. So instead of looking at healing the physical body first, they always go to look at what is existing on the level of the soul that is causing this physical expression or this physical form to be experiencing whatever's going on, whether that be injury, illness, or loss. And the shamans really look at that we can have traumatic events in either this lifetime or another, where an aspect of our soul or an aspect of our being will separate off to be held in safety. So what we would say, I would say in a more conventional psychology way, we would say that's a form of disassociation. But the shamans feel like it's like a part of our soul gets separated off because it can't make sense or handle what's happening. So they believe that it goes to the underworld to be held, like in this really beautiful sacred space until we're ready to receive it back. So that process of doing a soul retrieval is going on a shamanic journey. And the way that I do it is looking and we're kind of tracing through like, is this connected to this lifetime or is there a connection to a different incarnation? And kind of just tracking and looking at what is the event that for me, it's like, what is holding like the deepest root of whatever the situation is. And I feel like it's my role to be a sacred witness and just to send love to whatever that is to help neutralize it. And then looking at, is there a belief system or a soul contract that needs to be canceled and replaced with something that will serve this being forward. And then we sing or call back that soul piece to be reunited with that being. So it really is a way of bringing harmony and wholeness to the soul. And I believe deeply, our souls are always complete and harmonious, but to bring cohesiveness to this energetic experience within us so that we can shift our physical state and how we engage with our outer reality in this life. And I think there's such a powerful component to the belief system work or the soul contract portion of it that can completely like rewire our nervous system and allow our physical bodies to repair and heal in pretty extraordinary ways. So,
Really well said.
yeah,
Really
thank
well
you.
said.
Thank you.
I feel like we do soul retrievals with almost all animals that I connect in with. They're like, "Oh yeah, and by the
Hmm.
way, back in this lifetime, I had
Yeah.
something happen to me and we need to go get that piece back. I'm ready to integrate the lessons." And I'm like, "Okay."
Yeah.
And it's amazing what lessons come back, and that's something that I personally have learned a lot about of how
Hmm.
to observe something play out that may
Yeah.
not be nice to see or witness, but then also hold that space of neutrality and
Yeah.
understand the lessons that need to be reintegrated back into the conscious mind and the body. It's just
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, because I think for all of us, complexity is how we grow. And well, I want to say that can be hard for us as humans. I feel like nature holds us in a really beautiful way where life can be very dynamic and complex and brutal, and it sort of just is. And I think for us as humans, like we create a lot of feelings and judgments around that. But yeah, it's like, how can we just be a sacred witness and really hold this being in divine love and really trust that everything that you've walked through in this lifetime or another is for the expansion, of your being. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I, where do I want to go with that?
Yeah.
Too many thoughts all at once are happening. Brain
Yeah.
clog.
No, that's okay.
How has your perception shifted from, you mentioned like when you first started animal communication, how a lot of the conversations were, do you like your food? Are you comfortable? What do
Hmm.
you need? My session started out that way too, and that's what I thought animal communication really ultimately was about, right? We talked to the
Yeah.
physical version of the animal,
Yeah.
and then quickly things started to change. So I'm curious if you can put this into words how your relationship and understanding of animals has shifted from when you started to now, and what that looks like from kind of a bigger picture perspective. I know when I met you just a few weeks ago in person, we talked a lot about the whales and
Yeah.
everything going on in the oceans, and
Hmm.
there's a lot of chaos and destruction, death and dying, and that's always really hard to hold.
Yeah.
So how has animal communication shifted the way that you perceive or experience those kinds of things?
Yeah. I would say I've always had, like, I would say I'm a very cosmically curious being. So my kind of entrance into doing animal communication, thankfully, I would say in a lot of ways, it didn't come through formal teaching. It was really practicing with friends, animals. And so I feel like the beautiful part of that is I had a lot of room to expand and play. And I feel like the animals pretty quickly, and I think again, like having the shamanic framework to work through, they pretty quickly took me to like soul level communication and really talking about going really beyond, the basics. So I feel like the animals were a little bit like, buckle up, we're going on a ride. Like you just record, what's coming through. And I was just fascinated, and I really, a part of me was like, I don't know, this could be like cuckoo bananas, but this is sort of fascinating. And then the more you kind of start researching spiritual concepts, it's like, okay, but this is actually totally correlating with information that's already out there. Um, so that's where I would say, I mean, when I say animals have been my biggest teachers, I'm like, I'm not playing around. Like, I really feel like what became so abundantly clear to me was like, you guys know way more than we do as humans. And I'm like, I'm happy to like, you're the master, I'm the student, especially cats. Like, if you guys are in animal communication, like, if you want to get really cosmic with a cat, like, prepare to have your mind blown. So, it's taken some courage to like be out on the internet talking about some of this stuff. And I feel like now, I mean, it feels way less weird than it did 6 or 7 years ago. But, um, they started talking about like different timelines and like the whales. Like I've got this huge love. I mean, the whales are a huge archetypal energy for me. And they were the first ones who showed me like grids of consciousness really being embedded in the earth. And so much of what they're doing through their whale song is bringing higher dimensional frequencies and actually seeding them, into the grids of consciousness to the earth, which the collective consciousness of all life then gets to benefit from that. So the conversation, Kara, that you and I had when we met in person, we were talking about, I started having students kind of come to me and be like, well, what do you think about everything that's going on with like all the whales dying? And the conversation you and I, Kara, had, I was sort of like, I had no idea. I mean, whales are all over my Instagram algorithm, and I'm like, none of what is coming into my reality is the destruction component. So there's like this, in these situations, I first go into like what feels real and true for me, like in my body, in the mind that exists in my heart, like in the wisdom of my heart, what feels real. And then I went to the whales and, it was sort of like, okay, well, help me see the truth. And that's often my ask in any situation with an animal or with nature is help me see the truth because I want to see beyond what my human mind and my human construct thinks is going on, which we're all humans in a human body having a very human experience. So, of course, our filters are always going to be in play to some degree. How our thoughts, our beliefs, our feelings are always going to want to come in and I think kind of shape what's coming at us. But an image that I keep seeing from Gaia, and the whales confirm this, is really when they talk about Earth splitting and our reality sort of ascending, like they showed me like two versions of Earth, like superimposed on one another. And the whales themselves were like, we are here really like serving Gaia and the greater consciousness itself. And there are whales that are here. It's their sacred gift. It's part of their mission in that they are, we could say, dissolving toxic timelines. They're bringing in frequencies, that are helping, things evolve and ascend. And there are some that are on the side of all that is falling apart, all that is dissolving and going away. And there are a tremendous amount of whales that are carrying that frequency and really helping build a new consciousness and that bridge for all of us to ascend and open our minds. So the beauty here is it's not that we be in one denial that there is great destruction happening here on the earth. And I feel like that is all meant to move something within each and every one of us. But their directive is it's like don't get too stuck in what is wanting to fall away, but can we begin to open our hearts and our minds to looking for all of the beautiful co-creation that is happening as well. And they really posted to me like every human gets to decide, do you stay in the old 3D reality that is stuck or really echoing all that is dysfunctional, or can you begin to hope for something better and to turn your hearts, your minds, and your awareness into all that is? It's like the splitting of the earth, it's like, do you want to be in a fifth dimensional frequency and above? and being willing to, we can hold compassion in our hearts for all that. And there's very real grief for all that is falling away, but still trust and turn our awareness to this higher possibility that exists for all of us. And this is where, again, like I always turn to animals with great gratitude because I feel like if we can let our fear take a back seat, I feel like they will always show me a pathway forward. They will always show me a way or a perspective that at least gives me a bridge or a map to things being better than they are. Like, do you feel that, Kara? Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, my dogs are barking in the background,
No,
and I do.
no
And as you're
problem.
talking about whales, I have to be honest with you. I don't think about water animals. I'm just a
Hmm.
land person.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I really don't have a
yeah.
ton of background with whales or ocean creatures, except for jellyfish, because they're just so weird to me and I love them.
Yeah.
But when you were talking about just like showing me the truth or having the whales show you the truth, and even though that there's destruction, there's always something that comes from it.
Mhm.
The world splitting. There's so many ways I could talk about this. Animals show me the world splitting also, and that
Mhm.
it's done, quote unquote. Like the shift has
Yeah,
already happened. It's just people catching up.
yeah.
But what kept coming into my mind as you were talking was the spirit of fire for me.
Yeah,
So we were just, even before we hopped on today,
yeah.
we were talking about the wildfires, and so many people right now are immersed in them. They're next to them. They're
Hmm.
experiencing them in many ways. And it's always literally a hot topic, no pun intended.
Yeah,
But fire is incredibly scary. It's destructive. It harms and kills a lot of beings. And there's a lot of emotion that can be connected to it. And so I think it was a couple of years ago, I tuned into some fires that had sparked from lightning or
hmm,
directly around us. Like we were
hmm,
watching to see if we would be on the move soon to get out of the way. And I thought, oh, well, I can talk to the fire. Let's see what the fire spirit's all about. And
hmm.
she was such a precious little energy. She was like, I'm on a mission to serve Gaia. Like I
Yeah,
was sent, like it was almost like I got a call or a notification, if you
yeah.
will. Like
Your
I'm
time. It's
getting
your
called, I
time.
have an
Yep.
assignment, and now I have to go. And they
Hmm.
rode the lightning down to
Hmm.
spark, and the spirit of the fire was like, it's kind of like in the movie Frozen, where the little
Hmm.
salamander's just running frantically and lighting fire everywhere.
Yeah,
It's like that's kind of what I saw. And this fire spirit was like, I'm just trying to clear the way for something else to grow.
yeah,
And yes, there's destruction. And she was like, I'm sending pulses out. If everybody can
yeah,
get out of the way, like they're getting forewarned. They have a chance to move if they can for the wildlife. And then the spirits of the trees and other beings. It's like I just saw the trees popping out of their bodies if they didn't want to experience it.
yeah,
And then the aftermath, I saw the fairies and Bigfoot and all of the nature spirits come in and kind of help with that process of transmutation, crossing over and
hmm,
kind of resetting that ecosystem. And I wouldn't have ever really thought of it that way. I mean, even
yeah,
coming from a biological background where fire
yeah,
is part of the ecosystem, to actually have the perspective of the flame and the
yeah,
fire itself was really humbling. And
yeah.
and
And
again, in service to Gaia. That's what I keep hearing over and over again from
yeah,
all of these types of connections. It's like if an animal dies, this is why. And it's so much deeper than we could even humanly make up if we wanted to, in my opinion.
yeah. And I feel like fire, something that's really that I reference a lot in the classes that I teach is alchemy. Um, and not from like this, I mean, we can look at it, it's kind of fun to look at it from more of a mystical component, but alchemy, like its symbol is fire. It's also symbolized by a triangle, which is the most stable geometric form in the universe. Like if we look at a forest, like I'm sitting outside my office and there's a bunch of evergreens behind me, like a healthy forest ecosystem actually needs fire. I mean, at some point, like it really needs fire for, rejuvenation and restoration. And I think that for us as humans, the shamans talk about it, there's tremendous sovereignty and power when we can learn how to die consciously. And I don't just mean like our physical body expiring, but to really walk through life, to have these initiatory experiences, which being in a wildfire can be a massive initiation, but constantly learning how to die to our old ways of being, our old concepts, the old ways that we are in the world so that we can evolve and that we can grow and expand. Um, and again, it's like when I can trust in nature, and I think there's something about we've got 20 acres and having to steward land. It's extraordinary and it's brutal. Like when you look at nature in her natural state, like I have had to become so congruent with death, whether I like it or not. All of the little birds and all of the little beings. It's like, I feel like the first 2 years we were here, I mean, nature, she was just sort of like, I wanted to turn away from like the harder aspects of watching, animals have to perish, and not being able to save everything, and really having to learn the hard way that when I intervene and try to save, sometimes I'm actually creating more suffering. And that is such a hard thing for a tender-hearted being to experience in the world. But I feel like the more comfortable we can become with death and to allow it, these transformative processes to move through us, that we can allow fire and alchemy to exist in our lives and to trust that we can meet these situations. There's a tremendous grace, that comes with that.
I have learned so much about death and dying. I
Hmm.
used to be Gosh, I just remember when I was a kid, we would take long road trips and I would see all the wildlife all over the roads and I would just cry for
Yeah.
days because it just like, I mean, not to say that that's not a real thing in my heart still. Like, I just
Yeah.
have a hard time with, I still have a hard time with death, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
after communicating with so many animals that died for one reason or another, I'm like, they just perceive it so differently. And I kind of
Yeah.
have a funny story to lighten the mood a little
Yeah.
bit.
Yeah.
And also kind of piggyback on your thought of causing more harm when it, or I wouldn't say causing harm, it's more just like not honoring their wishes or
Yeah.
their sovereignty is for what they want. So a
Hmm.
few years ago, I was just outside with my kiddo playing badminton or something, and starlings went flying everywhere, and one of them got stuck in my chicken coop. I
Hmm.
literally don't know how this happened, but it like got flipped upside down, and his leg got wrapped in the wire. And I was
Hmm.
like, oh my God, everybody stop. Like, we have to go get this poor little baby, not baby,
Yeah.
but bird. And so we
Yeah.
cut the wire off. He broke his leg. It was awful. And I was like, okay, well, you're still alive. I have a wildlife rehab friend who gave me all of the to-dos on how to help. And so I put this bird in this really quiet space and I was like, you're so chill right now. Like you're probably in
Yeah.
shock. That's fine.
Yeah.
I get that. But I was just kind of like letting everything settle before I started to work on the leg. And it was so funny because he was like, it was actually quite fascinating. So, if you're not familiar with starlings, they have like a collective consciousness, like they just move
Yeah.
fluid as a group. And
Hmm.
and from like his perspective, it was like a magnet in his mind where he was like, I actually don't really have an individual personality. I'm just following like the cues of the flow. And
Uh-huh.
so when he was in the space that I was with him, he was like shaking his head energetically, of course, and he was like, "Whoa, this is what it feels like to be an individual." I was like, "Yes." So it was cool to kind of get that perspective.
Yeah.
And then he was like, "I really like watching your chickens." And I was like, "We need to talk about your leg and what just happened." And he's like, "Not interested at
It's like my
all."
leg is fine.
And he was like, "I'm
Like,
probably not going to make it. I have no interest in surviving this." And I was like, "What?"
yeah.
But I want you to. Like, my human wants you to. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, I'm gonna work on your leg. And he's like, fine, but I'm gonna die tonight. I'm like, dude, like, but why are
Give
you
some
so
lady some
chill?
hope.
I
Like,
know.
yeah.
I was like, okay, I think my human is getting in the way. So I texted a friend. I was like, can you talk to this starling and just vibe check? She was like, no,
Yeah.
he's good. I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So anyway, he was like, yeah, no, it's fine. Like, I'm really comfortable. All's well. I'll just transition when I'm ready to leave my body. And maybe I'll come back as a chicken. Like, they seem to have it pretty well. Like, they're
Yeah.
actually, I think he called them the fat ones. Actually, I was like, that's kind of rude, but yes. I can't quite remember, but it was really funny. And I was like,
Sweet.
okay, you do you. I can respect that. And he did end up dying. And he
Yeah.
circled around energetically and said, hello, I'm free.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's one of my chickens, actually, but I haven't confirmed it.
That's pretty sweet.
Of course, he'd come back in, right?
He just wants to come back and be one of your chickens. I love that.
Yeah, I was like, I want to be sad, but I can't. Like, I want to grieve you, but you're just making this way too easy.
You're making it too lighthearted.
Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
okay. That was one of my lessons where it's like, we have to honor your choices. Even if I want to help, I'm not going to. You're gonna do you.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting framework because if I really take the lead from animals, I've had to start in a lot of my animal communication sessions. I found with the horses in particular, where I'd have to tell people, I'm like, if you guys have some really serious concerns, I actually need you to tell me because what is a big concern to you may not be a big concern to your animal, especially when it comes to their health. Like, I've seen so many animals be really just congruent with where their physical body is at and to not create a judgment around it. It's like they sort of accept and move on. Meanwhile, the human is sort of quietly hyperventilating over things not being okay. And the animals are like, no, we're good. Like we're gonna move on, we'll be fine. Um, so yeah, it's been I think an interesting and beautiful experience to also see how animals view their physical self and what can be a huge concern and what isn't. And that can really differ from us as humans.
Yeah. And just
Yeah.
recognizing us as their guardians, like we still have to take care of the physical and be very anchored in the physical. But at the
Yeah.
same time, they're like, why do you waste your time doing that? I'm like,
Yeah.
because I feel like it's important. And they're like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, but it is to me.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Oh, it's so funny.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to ask because
Yeah.
you're so cosmically connected.
Hmm.
We're gonna just sidetrack a little bit
Yeah.
into the cosmic origins of animals. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that. Tell me more.
Yeah. So I actually want to talk a little bit when you were saying you weren't drawn to like whales or, animals in the water. And it does kind of segue into this beautifully. I would say my very human self, like I tend to really gravitate towards like I love living in the mountains and being around the trees. And yet I actually feel less connected to the ocean waters herself, but all of the beings in the ocean. Um, my whole life I felt this deep, like deep love. And I have this really very strong visceral reaction of like, I will not eat anything that comes out of the ocean because it feels, I don't say this to a lot of people, so to say it, but I feel like you guys will understand this. I'm like, I feel like I'm eating my family. Even down to like eating seaweed. I'm like, all of it is like a giant hard pass for me. And the way the whole cosmic origins aspect opened up was maybe 5 or 6 years ago, Debbie Solaris kind of came through my YouTube algorithm and she does like Akashic record readings and looks at star seeds and where people come from. And I feel like too for any of you guys doing animal communication, sometimes it's just the spark. Like someone will open a door of information that can then blow your whole reality wide open. And I listened to a bunch of her sessions on YouTube and you can kind of listen to a couple and get a sense of the different planets and the different star beings. And again, it's like once that concept in my mind sort of came into play, the animals started sort of coming forward. And the whales being like, well, we're from Sirius B. Like, you're from Sirius B. Sirius B is a water planet. Like, it's also the home of the Sirian mystery schools, which is why it's so easy for you to do like these certain things. So I'm like, my soul is primarily from Sirius, which for years I've been seeing like spinning triangles. Like, I'll do breath work and have all of these images of like a triangle with an eye in it and all of these things that like all point back to this connection to Sirius B. So like again, it was just an awareness and I feel like much like the shamanic healing on the animals, it was just like I don't know if it's good for a human. Like let's just see what the animals have to say about it. And it has again like really expanded my work and what's possible, but much like humans, animals have a starseed consciousness and aspect in the cosmos that they're anchored in, the different animal species, and they're flowing, cosmic frequencies and love here on the planet Earth. and allowing like their humans to experience these frequencies as well. So, where I find it can be really helpful in the realm of an animal communication session, if we've got a human that, is from like the Orion constellation, which can be, albeit deeply spiritual, can also have like a lot of strong fire energy. And if they've called in an animal, like cats are very connected to Sirius as well. So if you've got a really strong fire person and a cat who's, deeply connected to their consciousness in Sirius in Egypt, and if there's a big clash there, sometimes understanding the cosmic energies that are feeding into a relationship and a dynamic, it just adds a depth of understanding and how do we bring harmony and repair into a relationship if that's needed. Or even just understanding a lot of us, before we incarnated here on Earth, we've also had connections to our animals in the cosmos. And it's like, what has that experience been like in the relationship? More often than not, it's like people, I'm sure you guys have had this experience where sometimes you meet an animal and they just hit in your heart a little bit differently than the way a different animal has. And often, that relationship expands beyond, physical incarnations here on Earth. So it's just like an added layer of energy in the relationship that can be a great source of healing or even just add a tremendous depth of understanding all that you and your animals have been through. So,
I love
yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
I have had so many similar experiences where all the animals are like, I'm actually a dragon in a goat body, or I'm a dragon
Yeah.
in a horse body. And I'm like, okay, but we are actually talking about something in horse body world right now. But we're gonna have to pin that. And they're like, no,
Love
this
that
is
for
actually
you,
relevant.
but
I'm like,
yeah.
so I actually just like to give a little bit more tangibility to how this weaves together because I had a really hard time figuring that out. I'm like, why do I
Yeah.
need to know that you're a dragon? Nobody's gonna believe me that you're
Yeah.
this in this, right? Like we're
Yeah.
trying to stay human and
Yeah.
not turn people off from the depth of animal communication, but also like this is cool at the
Yeah.
same
It's
time.
like, please tell me more, but can we make it relatable? Like for
Yeah,
your
and
human.
at
Yeah.
one point I was like, what's the point of this? Like, how
Hmm.
is this helpful for somebody to know these types of essences running through you? And one of my clients, it was so fascinating. This is what locked it home for me, is she was having trouble with her horse.
Hmm.
And she was just like, no, this was a mare. She keeps bucking me off. We can't go down the trails. I don't know what
Hmm.
to do. Like, she is my
Hmm.
soul horse. I know it, but we're
Yeah.
not jiving. Like, I can't
Yeah.
ride. I
Yeah.
was like, okay, well, let's just see what's going on. So I talked to this horse, and she's like, I am a dragon. I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, bro, tell me more. Like, let's just roll with this. And she was like, when we're not in our physical bodies, like, I am the dragon and this is my rider.
Hmm.
Only I'm in a very small, clunky body and I don't know how to move. And
Yeah.
usually, like, the relationship was as the dragon was the guardian of the person. And they
Yeah.
had that working relationship where it's like they're fluidly in motion. And this
Hmm.
horse, like, they agreed to come into this life together as horse and rider instead of
Hmm.
dragon and rider. And this horse was just like, I'm in a body, it's heavy, I'm too small. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know how to be. And this horse was so insecure because of the dragon essence running through it. He was like, I don't think I can take care of my mom. I
Yeah.
can't protect her in the way that I used to and that I know
Yeah.
how to. And
Yeah.
so we had to rebuild the relationship from a very 3D perspective of like, let's start with groundwork. You
Yeah.
need to know how to use your body.
Yeah.
You need to know how to communicate on the ground before we get in the saddle. And so
Yeah.
they went back to the very basics and
Yeah.
started to build the relationship back up. And they had a wonderful relationship afterwards. We had to understand that part to
Yeah.
understand how we could help them in this physical world.
Yeah. One of my horses, she started to find me in the dream state about a year before she was born. And I was in the process of looking for my horse and found my gelding that I have. But I kept having dreams about a bay mare with a white star. And I was looking, looking, couldn't, didn't find anything, found Felix, fell in love with him. That was that. And about a year after, it was actually a year, almost down to the week that I had him, there was a stallion that I really liked, and he had his first kind of group of babies on the ground. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to Google and purely out of curiosity, just see what's out there. And I saw a picture of her. She was 6 days old. And as soon as I saw her, I was like, oh my God, there you are. And kind of a magical experience how she came into my life because I reached out to the breeder. They wanted far more money for her than I think was reasonable for a foal, and I just didn't have it. So I kind of threw it out to the universe where I'm like, I really feel like this is my horse, but like I don't know how to make this happen. So she went under contract like within a week. And I kind of had to just, in my heart, I'm like, okay, like whatever's meant to be here is meant to be. So this was in June. In November, the breeder reached out to me and they were like, the people stopped making payments on her. Like, would you be interested? And made him an offer. And anyway, it all worked out. So that's how I ended up with Sedera. But as she's grown, um, so many people are like, oh, that horse is a dragon. They're like, she's a really nice dragon, but she's a dragon. And her whole aura, even when she was a baby and she was like a little shrimp, I mean, she puts off this energy of like, you don't mess with her. But she's also very maternal and snuggly. So she was the one who showed me, like, she's from the Antares constellation, and she showed me this beautiful purple energy with the frequency. And I come from a very different constellation point with a very different frequency because as soon as like emotion comes into anything, she gets scared, but she's going to fight. And so, anyway, the only reason I share this because her kind of showing me like where she really originates from in the cosmos, and there is very much a frequency and a feeling. And she showed me it's like you always need to hold like a very specific way of being on the inside of your body when you work with me because if you come with too much human emotion, or if you're overthinking what you're asking, or if you're setting a boundary from an emotional state instead of clarity, it like energetically fries her circuits. So again, for me, like that's a beautiful example of being able to retrieve that information and to have like a very clear template of we don't need to get too stuck in the story of her being from the Antares constellation point, but there's a feeling there that allowed me to shift my state when I've engaged with her. And I mean, like, she's the safest horse I've ever been around because it's like there's something energetically I can shift when I'm with her that creates harmony. And I can't imagine on some levels not having that information because I feel like in the wrong hands, this could be a very tricky horse to be around, but understanding who she is in a bigger sense makes working with her incredibly easy. So,
Hmm. That makes
yeah,
so much sense.
yeah,
And okay, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time, so we'll do Q&As here in just a moment, but I just have
yeah.
to share my story real fast too.
Okay.
So, like so many animals, when it's time, they're like, we need to start planting the seed in our human's mind that we're coming. And I,
Mhm.
full disclosure, am not a cat person. I say that and I have two cats.
Okay.
But at the time, I was like, hard no, no cats, don't want them, don't really
hmm
appreciate them. And all of a sudden, one day, I was like, I really, really want a big fat black cat. And I was like, this isn't going to be a small cat. I was like, just a
Yeah,
big black cat. And it became an obsession to
yeah.
where I was like scrolling on all of the adoption places and I was like, I'm just like, I don't get it. I had to literally tell myself, don't get a cat. Your dog will not appreciate it, number one. And two, like, oh, you don't need a cat.
Right.
So after about a year of me really trying to disregard all of that, I adopted a feral and I was like, that did
hmm
not satisfy my need.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, that's not it. And then
Yeah.
almost immediately, she came into my life. I found Mama Kitty, and Mama Kitty had babies. And as soon as she had her babies, I was like, there you are. I was like,
hmm
you are mine. It was the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's
Yeah.
the energy I've been feeling for a year. It's
Yeah.
crazy. And now
Yeah.
she's like, what one might call a witch is familiar if you want to go there. She's
Totally.
definitely my girl.
I mean, I've just had so many of these experiences. It's kind of confirmed to me also, like this idea of what's really meant for you, I really believe can't miss you.
Absolutely. Even if they take a detour, they will make their way to you.
100%.
Oh my gosh,
100%.
we could do this all day.
I know, so fun.
We just need to do this regularly,
I
have these
know.
conversations.
But yeah.
However, I do want to open up the floor to anybody that might have thoughts, comments, questions for Tracy. And just as a quick reminder, I am using this recording for podcast and YouTube. So if you want to put your questions in the chat. I'm happy to read those aloud, or if you're comfortable unmuting and sharing your thoughts verbally, that's fine too. You can just wave me down or raise your hand and I can call on you. So that is your invitation.
Okay.
And Donica says, do all animals remember their past parallel lives, contracts, etc.? If so, why do animals get to remember but humans do not?
So my feeling is yes. When I communicate with animals, they always give me it's a felt sense with like a visual sort of anchoring in my mind of their other lifetimes feel it's almost like the fingers on our hands, like they're just there and they can just sort of look and pull. The way that I interpret this is I don't feel like animals have the filters on reality that we as humans do. I feel like we as humans, now I don't have human children, but I think so many of us I actually think we all come without these filters. And as we sort of become more human and entrained and sort of taught to exist in this reality, I think more and more of those filters go in place. I actually believe that most children, I mean, there's so many documented stories of like little kids like really having clear access to other lifetimes that they have. So I feel like there are a couple of reasons. So I think it's part of our indoctrination into being out into the world. And I think sometimes just surviving in this reality. Um, I think there's quite a bit more complexity to our human experience and what animals experience. And I think there may be some wise, higher aspect of us that feels like it could be very psychologically dysregulating for humans to have that much free flowing information coming towards us, where I feel like animals just their confidence or their understanding of their place, not only in reality, but in the universe, just feels very settled and clear. And that's where I feel like for me, they're my spiritual masters in that. Um, I always feel like I don't want animals to be more like humans. I'm like, I think there's so much to be gained if we can learn to be open, much in the way that they are. But yeah, I feel like, especially for those of you guys dipping your toe into animal communication, sometimes it's just asking the right questions or framing things in the right way, and giving animals permission. I think so much of it is like, hey, I can actually handle this level of information. Like, what can you tell me about this experience? But I also feel like there's a really beautiful experience for us as humans when we can allow the animals to be our teachers and to kind of pave that pathway for us. I think it opens more and more possibility within ourselves for us to begin to take ourselves into a state of being open to exploring our other lifetimes. I actually feel they're just as accessible to us. It's just allowing our conscious human mind to take a back seat enough for us to trust in our heart and our safety in this energetic realm that we can go into those places and come back. Does that hopefully answer your question? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was a great question. And I
Yeah.
pretty much verbatim second everything you say.
Yeah.
And just from working with students and my own personal experience, I've seen the whole gamut of people being wide open and not really knowing what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
So it's
It's a real
hard.
thing.
It is a real thing. And so
Yeah.
that's something that I always am really conscientious about too as we start to open up our channels is like we have to go slow and we have to have control. And
Yeah.
that's something that the animals teach me all the time. Like my cat, for example.
Yeah.
Well, I think we asked her one time, it's like, do animals always hear our thoughts and questions and are they always listening? And the answer is no. It's like they have such
Why
good
do they want
boundaries and
to? Yeah.
control. And like humans need to learn that. That's something that we have to learn. And that's part
Yeah.
of this whole connection too, is like, how do you turn it on? How do you turn it off intentionally so we
Yeah.
can live in this physical reality without disassociating or completely detaching and going into spaces that we shouldn't, or even just losing touch with reality. It's so
Yeah.
I do think there's a lot of skill involved too,
Yeah.
partly because we are not taught how to do this. Many of
Yeah.
us, I can't speak for everyone, but not
I
everybody
certainly, I
is
mean,
allowed to stay open and
mhm.
have the teachings to stay
Yeah.
open. Like as a mother of a 10-year-old who is very empathic and sensitive, up until he was about 4 or 5, I was like, you are wide open, my dear friend. And now I
Yeah.
can start to see it closing. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, like this was part of the process. It's
Yeah.
okay. But
Yeah.
to consciously reawaken or open up those channels, I actually think there's something really beautiful about kind of that full circle moment and just being like, oh, okay, I got this now. Like, look at all the
Yeah.
things that I once knew and now it's back, and I'm
Yeah.
learning it from a much more mature level with control and understanding, which
Yeah.
I think it's a pain in the butt to do that,
Yeah.
and it's frustrating, but I
But I
think
think
there's a
it's part of
beautiful gift
our,
in that too.
yeah, it's part of our
Hmm.
sovereignty as a being as well, like to have the ability to choose. I don't think well, I think sometimes that those closing down, I guess on some level it is a choice from our higher self, but to really make the choices we walk through life, I think is an incredibly sovereign step in sovereignty to decide like how open do I wish to be or how do I have the energetic control to decide? Because people ask me all the time and I'm like, when I'm just existing, like if I'm in the airport, if I'm going grocery shopping, I'm like, man, my energy is pulled right up tight to my body. And I'm like, I am not open and available for anything. And that is very much like a self-protective thing, but there's beautiful sovereignty in deciding like how open I get to be and when and how information comes to me. It really is for my mental well-being for sure.
Absolutely. I used to be a sponge too.
Yeah,
And
me too.
now I'm like, just kidding. We are
Now
closing
I'm
the doors,
Teflon.
folks. But I
Yeah.
didn't know that until I learned more, right? It's like, how do you
Yeah.
open your energy? How do you close your energy?
Yep.
I mean, that's like basic foundations that nobody knows.
Yeah. It should be a kindergarten level, like being a human here on planet Earth. Like, yeah,
Being a
yeah,
human 101.
yeah,
That's what we need
right.
to do. That's our new
Yeah,
class for kiddos.
yeah.
I can just see little aliens in human bodies
Right,
being like, what are we doing?
yeah. What is this life?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Okay, so Troy says, I thought of this when cosmic cats were mentioned. I
Yeah,
once got a message from a cosmic cat that was about to a cat person who was a cat that became human to learn about human imagination and for that
yeah,
experience to balance the certainty that being a cat brought them. That makes sense.
yeah. I mean, um, I absolutely feel like all beings, whether we're walking on two legs or four legs in this lifetime, I really feel like you are not committed to one species. And I've had so many animals show me different animal bodies and human bodies. And I remember I was just in hindsight kind of, my parents must have thought I was such a weird child. But I remember at one point being in the car with my mom and as serious as the day is long, telling her, I'm like, well, I know I've been a horse before and like listing all the reasons why I knew what it was like to be a horse. So I just remember my mom, we were like driving down the freeway and she's like, oh, okay, like, so
Yeah, we would have
yeah.
been really good friends. I was
Yeah,
pretending to be a
totally.
fairy half of the time. I was like, look at me twirl, which I'm
Yeah.
pretty convinced that was actually part of my past lives in
Your
essence. So, you know.
fairy self coming forward. Yeah. Yeah.
I think a lot of us can relate to
Yeah, totally.
that. I just want to say thank you all so much for coming
Yeah.
and
Thank you guys.
being here for the whole hour. If you happened to, I know we had a few people pop off, but thank you all so, so much for coming. And
Yeah.
Tracy is on Instagram. I will put
Hmm.
all of her details
Thank
in
you.
the replay spaces and everywhere else. I can't remember your website off of the top of my head though.
Oh, it's just
Oh,
tracyrainwaters.com.
well,
So
that's
it's my
easy.
name. And there is an S on the end of my name. So yeah. Yeah. It's pretty
Perfect. Yeah.
easy. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank
Yeah.
you all so, so much. I'll post the replay as soon as I can. And I hope you all just have a beautiful rest of your day,
Thank you
night,
guys
whatever
so
time it is
much.
where you are.
Yeah. I appreciate all of you guys taking time out of your day. It's so appreciated. So thank you. And thank you, Kara.
Yeah. Oh, we'll do this again.
Yeah, totally.
All right, everybody. We'll see you all later.